against 1824 as the first great breach of public trust. This early scandal helped define the boundaries of acceptable political behavior, fueling reforms, public demands for accountability, and the development of partisan institutions that housed dissent and competition. The corrupt bargain of 1824 didn't just shape one election. It became the blueprint for how America confronts political scandal, public outrage, and demands for transparency. Even today, when Americans debate election legitimacy or political deals, the ghosts of 1824 still hover in the background, reminding every generation of democracy's fragile promise. Although no laws were passed in direct response to the corrupt bargain, the scandal's legacy reshaped American politics permanently. It established a precedent. Elections were no longer simply formalities decided by elites. Votes, popular sentiment, and public outrage mattered. The controversy surrounding 1824 exposed how easily political backroom deals could undermine democratic ideals. It triggered deeper public consciousness about fairness, legitimacy, and corruption. In the decades to follow, future political scandals, from graft and patronage to corruption and criminal conspiracies, would all be measured into what would become the National Republican, later Whig faction, while Jackson's supporters gradually coalesced into a populist movement. This polarization laid the groundwork for the modern two-party system. The corrupt bargain became more than just an election dispute. It became a rallying cry for fighting perceived corruption and restoring popular rule. For many Americans, the scandal proved that democratic institutions were vulnerable and that vigilance, transparency, and public pressure would be as important as ballots in protecting the republic. Once the corrupt bargain narrative took hold, its effects rippled outward across the young republic. Andrew Jackson and his supporters refused to accept the outcome as fair. They framed the result as a betrayal by the political elite and a gross injustice to the will of the majority. Grassroots anger grew, with editors and pamphleteers decrying the elite collusion, accusing Adams and Clay of undermining American democracy. Newspapers carried blistering editorials. Political clubs formed. Voters, especially in the South and West, felt alienated by what they saw as an aristocratic plot. The scandal redefined alliances. The old consensus that underpinned early U.S. politics began to fracture. Supporters of Adams and Clay coalesced, seemingly purchased behind closed doors. Newspapers and political commentators began calling it a corrupt bargain. For many observers, this was not just a defeat, it felt like a betrayal of democratic intention. The notion that the popular vote and the will of the people could be circumvented through insider politics triggered widespread outrage. Adams's legitimacy was questioned from the start, and Clay's elevation cast a long shadow over the new administration. What should have been a smooth transition of power instead became a symbol of political cynicism and elite collusion. The very warning sign that democracy could be hijacked by secrecy and backroom deals. In the House of Representatives, power brokers quietly began negotiations. As Speaker of the House, Henry Clay wielded significant influence over which candidate would emerge victorious. Though Clay himself had been eliminated from the race, his support became the deciding factor, and he chose to back John Quincy Adams. Almost immediately after Adams won the presidency, Congress appointed Clay as Secretary of State, a position historically regarded as the most likely stepping stone to the presidency. To Jackson's supporters and to many ordinary Americans, the timing seems too convenient, a textbook case of quid pro quo. Despite the lack of direct proof for an explicit deal, the optics were damning. A major political victory. Stage was set for what would become a defining controversy. What should have been a celebration of democracy turned into an opening for political maneuvering. Once the decision went to Congress, expectations shifted dramatically. Many Americans assumed Jackson's popular mandate would carry the day. Instead, alliances formed behind closed doors, and the hope for a transparent, fair selection began to erode. The sense of betrayal among Jackson's supporters foreshadowed the scandal to come. What began as a legitimate contest ended in frustration, confusion, and suspicion. The perfect storm for political scandal. The presidential election of 1824 began as one of the most chaotic and consequential votes in early American history. 4 major candidates vied for power: Andrew Jackson, John Quincy Adams, William H. Crawford, and Henry Clay. Among them, Andrew Jackson led both the popular vote and the electoral vote. He seemed the clear favorite to take the presidency. Yet under the constitutional rules set by the 12th Amendment, a majority electoral vote was required to win. No candidate reached that threshold. The election was thrown into the hands of the House of Representatives. As supporters and citizens waited anxiously, the